I found out my wife was cheating on me the same way you find out your house is on fire. Too late to save anything that really mattered. It was a Tuesday in late October, one of those gray Chicago mornings when the sky looks like it's been rubbed with ash. I remember because I had just poured myself a second cup of burnt office coffee and was staring out the window of our kitchen in Oak Park, thinking about nothing in particular. Life felt stable, predictable, safe. God, I was wrong. Emily had left her phone on the counter. That alone wasn't unusual. We'd been married 12 years, and trust had long ago replaced curiosity. At least, that's what I thought. But the screen lit up. A message. Just a quick flash. Last night was worth every risk. I wish I could tell you I ignored it. That I respected her privacy. That I was the kind of man who just turned away. But I'm not. I picked it up. My hands didn't even shake at first. Funny how the body protects you from the truth until it's ready to crush you with it. The message was from a name I didn't recognize, Ryan. No last name. No contact photo. Just that one sentence sitting there like a loaded gun. I opened the thread. There's a moment, right before your life splits into before and after, where everything goes quiet. No sound. No thoughts. Just this strange, suspended stillness. Then it hits. Photos. Messages. Weeks of them. Maybe months. I stopped scrolling when I saw enough to understand what was happening. Hotel receipts. Late-night plans. Jokes that weren't mine. Intimacy that didn't belong to me anymore. My wife, my Emily, had been living a second life. And I hadn't noticed a thing. I heard the bathroom door open upstairs. The pipes creaked, the same way they always had. Everything in the house felt exactly the same. Except it wasn't. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. That part one remember clearly. Like some instinct told me, don't move anything yet. Don't let her know. Not yet. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain like it might rearrange itself into answers. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't touch it. My chest felt tight, not like a heart attack, but like something inside me was folding in on itself. 12 years. We had a daughter, a mortgage, traditions, Sunday pancakes, Christmas lights I put up every year while she laughed at how crooked they looked. Was all of that fake? Or had it just stopped being real at some point, and I was the only one who didn't get the memo? Emily walked into the kitchen a few minutes later, tying her hair back like she always did. She smiled at me, warm, familiar, completely unchanged. "Morning," she said, and I swear to God, for half a second, I almost believed everything was still okay. I didn't confront her that morning, not because I was calm, not because I was thinking clearly, but because something inside me, something cold and methodical, told me to wait. So I smiled back. "Morning," I said, and my voice sounded normal. That was the strangest part. You'd think betrayal like that would crack something open, make it impossible to pretend. But no, life doesn't shatter all at once. It fractures quietly. Emily moved around the kitchen like she always did, opening cabinets, pulling out cereal, slicing a banana for our daughter, Lily. She hummed under her breath. Some tune I couldn't place. I watched her like I was studying a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked without looking at me. "Yeah," I said. "You?" Like a rock. That almost made me laugh. Lily came running in a minute later, still in her pajamas, hair wild, dragging her stuffed rabbit across the floor. "Dad, you promised pancakes." I blinked, like I'd forgotten what that word meant. "Right," I said. "Pancakes." I stood up, moving on autopilot. Butter in the pan. Batter poured. The familiar rhythm of a life I suddenly didn't recognize anymore. Emily leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. That phone. And I had to fight the urge to snatch it out of her hands and smash it against the wall. Instead, I flipped pancakes. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. The world doesn't stop. There's no dramatic music. No warning sirens. Just breakfast. Emily kissed Lily on the head, then grabbed her coat. "I've got an early meeting," she said. "Might be late tonight." "Of course you will," I thought. Out loud, I said, "Okay." She hesitated for a second. Just a flicker. Like she was checking something. Me, maybe. Looking for cracks. I forced myself to meet her eyes. Steady. Neutral. She smiled again. "Love you." And there it was. The lie, wrapped in something that used to mean everything. "Love you too," I said. The door closed behind her, and just like that, the performance ended. I stood there in the kitchen, spatula still in my hand, staring at the door like it might open again and rewind the last 10 minutes. It didn't. "Dad," Lily's voice snapped me back. The pancake's burning. I looked down. Smoke curled up from the pan. I turned off the stove and slid the ruined pancake onto a plate. Sorry, kiddo, I muttered. She frowned. You okay? That question hit harder than anything else that morning. I knelt down in front of her, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. She had Emily's eyes. That thought twisted something deep inside me. Yeah, I said softly. Just tired. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Kids are good at accepting simple explanations. Adults, not so much. After I dropped her off at school, I didn't go to work. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every memory I had with Emily. Every laugh, every argument, every I love you, trying to figure out where it had started to rot. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I called in sick and started digging. I started with the obvious. Phone records. We shared a family plan. One of those things you set up when life feels permanent. I logged into the account from my car, hands gripping the wheel tighter than they needed to. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second before I opened the call history. There it was. A number I didn't recognize, repeated over and over again. Late nights, early mornings, gaps in the middle of her workday that suddenly made a lot more sense. The pattern was unmistakable. You don't call the same person that often unless they matter. Or unless they used to matter, and you can't let go. I stared at that number like it might blink back at me. Then I did something worse. I called it. It rang twice before going to voicemail. A man's voice. Calm. Confident. The kind of voice that doesn't rush. Hey, it's Ryan. Leave a message. I hung up immediately, but it was too late. That one sentence was enough to make him real. He wasn't just some name on a screen anymore. He existed. He breathed. He spoke. He had a voice my wife knew better than I did. I sat there for a long time after that, my phone resting on my lap, my mind running through scenarios I couldn't control. Was he taller than me? Funnier? Younger? Did he know about me? About Lily? Or was I just a detail she conveniently left out? That thought stuck. Because it didn't feel like anger. It felt like being erased. I forced myself to keep going. If I was going to fall apart, I needed the full picture first. I drove home, walked straight into our bedroom, and opened Emily's closet. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Her clothes were neatly arranged, shoes lined up, that faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. For a second, I hesitated. Then I reached for the top shelf. That's where people hide things. Not because it's clever, but because it feels out of reach. I pulled down a small leather bag I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. Inside, receipts. Not crumpled. Not hidden well. Just placed there. Hotel names. Dates. Weekdays. Middle of the week. While I was at work. While Lily was at school. While life, our life, was supposedly happening the way it always had. I flipped through them slowly, like each one might hurt less if I took my time. It didn't. Then I saw one that made my chest go completely still. A date from 3 weeks ago. That was the weekend of our anniversary. We'd gone out to dinner. Sat at that little Italian place downtown. She'd held my hand across the table. Smiled at me like she meant it. And the next day, she'd checked into a hotel. With him. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, the receipt still in my hand. My vision blurred, but I didn't cry. Not yet. It was like my body had decided this wasn't the moment for that. This was something else. Something colder. Because up until that point, a part of me, small, stupid, desperate, had been trying to explain it away. Maybe it was recent. A mistake. A moment of weakness. But this was a choice. Repeated. Planned. Maintained. I looked around the room. The same room where we'd built a life together. And for the first time, it didn't feel like mine. It felt staged. Like I'd been living inside a story that someone else had already rewritten. And I was the only one who hadn't read the new version. By the time Emily came home that night, I had already decided 2 things. First, I wasn't going to explode. Second, I needed to hear her lie to my face. Not because I enjoyed it. Not because I wanted to torture myself. But because I needed to understand how far gone we really were. There's a difference between someone who slips and someone who builds an entirely new life behind your back. I needed to know which one she was. She walked in around 7:30, dropping her keys into the same ceramic bowl by the door we'd bought at a street fair years ago. I was sitting on the couch, TV on, but I couldn't tell you what was playing. Something loud. Something meaningless. Hey, she said, kicking off her shoes. Sorry, it was a long day. I looked at her. Really looked. There was no visible guilt, no hesitation, no sign that she was carrying the weight of what I knew. And that scared me more than anything. Yeah, I said casually. What kept you? She shrugged, walking into the kitchen. Meetings. You know how it is. I almost smiled at that. Meetings. That word was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I stood up slowly and followed her. Every step felt deliberate, like I was walking into something I couldn't walk back from. You hungry? She asked, opening the fridge. I can heat something up. No, I said. I ate earlier. That wasn't true. I hadn't eaten all day, but hunger felt irrelevant now, like it belonged to a different version of me. She nodded, distracted, pulling out a container and setting it on the counter. Same routine, same rhythm, same lie. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Emily, I said. Something in my voice must have been different. She paused. Not dramatically, just enough. Yeah? I let the silence stretch for a second, long enough to feel it settle between us. Then I asked, Who's Ryan? The container slipped from her hands. It didn't shatter, just hit the floor with a dull plastic thud, the lid popping loose, food spilling out across the tile. But neither of us looked at it. Her face changed. Not completely, but enough. That perfect, practiced normalcy cracked for just a second, and I saw it. The flicker, the calculation, the instant where her mind started rearranging reality. What? She said too quickly. Who? There it was. The lie. Clean. Immediate. Instinctive. I nodded slowly, like I expected that answer. Ryan, I repeated. The one you've been calling. The one you saw last weekend. The one you texted this morning. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. She stared at me like I'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. Then came the second layer. I think you're mistaken, she said, quieter now. Careful. That one almost impressed me. Not denial. Deflection. I pushed off the doorway and stepped closer, reaching into my pocket. I pulled out one of the receipts and placed it on the counter between us. Her eyes dropped to it. And that's when everything changed. Because this time, she didn't pick it up. Didn't argue. Didn't explain. She just stared at it like it had finally caught up with her. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, real, and for the first time all day, I felt something break loose inside my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just the beginning of something much worse. Go ahead, I said quietly. Tell me I'm mistaken. She didn't say I was mistaken. She didn't say anything at all. Emily just stood there, staring at the receipt like it might disappear if she didn't move. Her shoulders slowly dropped, like something inside her had finally given up holding the weight. And that silence? That was my answer. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding all day. It came out shaky, uneven, like my body was finally catching up with what my mind already knew. How long? I asked. My voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. It was flat. That seemed to affect her more than if I had yelled. She closed her eyes for a second, then reached for the counter like she needed something solid to hold on to. A few months, she said quietly. A few months. I nodded slowly, repeating it in my head like it might start to make sense if I heard it enough times. A few months, I echoed. So what? Since summer. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because something inside me snapped in a way that didn't leave room for anything else. It was a dry, hollow sound, the kind that doesn't belong in a normal conversation. Wow, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. That's impressive. She flinched at that. Good. Was any of it real? I asked, gesturing vaguely around us. Or was I just convenient? Her head snapped up. That's not fair. I stared at her. Not fair. I repeated. You're sleeping with another man for months, and you want to talk about fair? I didn't plan this, she said quickly. It just happened. I shook my head. No, I said. It didn't just happen. You don't accidentally build a second relationship. You don't accidentally check into hotels. You don't accidentally lie every single day. Each word felt sharper now, colder, more precise. She looked away, her jaw tightening. It wasn't like that, she muttered. Then what was it like, Emily? I pressed. Explain it to me. Help me understand how you go from 12 years to this. That hit something. I saw it in her face, the shift from defense to something else. Not quite guilt. Not quite regret. Something more complicated. I was lonely, she said. The words landed heavier than I expected. I blinked. Lonely? I repeated. Yes, she said, more firmly now. You were always working. Always tired. Always somewhere else. even when you were right here. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out, because part of me recognized what she was saying, and I hated that. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she continued, her voice shaking now. At first, it was just talking, someone listening, someone noticing me again. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. So instead of talking to me, I said, you found someone else. It wasn't that simple. It is that simple. I cut in. You had a choice. Every single step of the way, you had a choice. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was final. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw someone who had already left. She just hadn't taken her things yet. So what now? I asked quietly. She hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I don't know. That's what she said. Not I'm sorry. Not it's over. Not I choose you. Just, I don't know. I nodded slowly, like that answer made sense. Like it didn't hit me harder than anything else she'd said that night. Because here's the thing. People think betrayal is the worst part. It's not. The worst part is realizing you're no longer the obvious choice. I turned away from her and walked back into the living room. My legs felt steady, but everything else inside me was shifting, rearranging, collapsing into something I didn't recognize. Emily didn't follow right away. I could hear her in the kitchen, moving slowly now. No more pretending. No more rhythm. Just distance. I picked up the remote and muted the TV. The sudden silence filled the house like pressure. After a minute, she stepped into the doorway. We need to talk about this, she said. I let out a quiet breath. We are talking about it. No, she shook her head. I mean really talk. About us. About what went wrong. I laughed again, softer this time, but just as empty. What went wrong? I repeated. You cheated on me, Emily. That's what went wrong. It's not that simple, she insisted. It is for me. She crossed her arms, defensive now. So that's it. 12 years, and you're just done? That question sat between us. Heavy. Dangerous. Because for a split second, I hesitated. 12 years. A whole life built together doesn't just disappear because of one conversation. It lingers. It pulls at you. It reminds you of who you used to be. But then I thought about the messages. The receipts. The way she said I don't know. And something inside me settled. Not healed. Not okay. Just clear. You were already done, I said quietly. You just didn't tell me. That hit harder than anything else I'd said. She took a step back like I'd physically pushed her. That's not true, she whispered. Then prove it, I replied. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to say, I nodded once, more to myself than to her. Does he know about me? I asked. She hesitated again. Too long. Not really, she admitted. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course. Of course I was just a footnote in someone else's story. Does he know about Lily? That one broke something in her expression. Yes, she said quickly. He knows I have a daughter. A daughter, I repeated. Not a family. She didn't respond. I walked past her, heading toward the hallway. Every step felt heavier now, but also more certain. Where are you going? She asked, her voice sharper. To check on my daughter, I said. The one who still thinks her parents are okay. That silenced her. I paused for a second at the edge of the hallway, my hand resting against the wall. Then I added, without turning around, you can sleep in the guest room tonight. I didn't wait for her answer. Because for the first time all day, I wasn't asking anymore. Lily was already asleep. I stood in her doorway longer than I needed to, just watching her breathe. Slow, steady, peaceful in a way that felt almost unreal after everything that had just happened downstairs. Her nightlight cast a soft glow across the room, catching the edges of her drawings taped to the wall, stick figures, crooked houses, a sun that always smiled no matter what. In every picture, there were three people. Me, Emily, and her. I swallowed hard and stepped inside, careful not to make a sound. The floor creaked under my weight, but she didn't stir. I sat on the edge of her bed and gently brushed my hand over her hair. For a moment, everything else disappeared. No messages, no receipts, no Ryan. Just this. This was real. This still mattered. And that thought hit me harder than anything else that day, because it meant I didn't have the luxury of falling apart completely. Not anymore. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. I've got you, I whispered, more to myself than to her. Then I stood up and walked out, quietly closing the door behind me. The house felt different now. Not louder, not emptier, just divided. Emily was in the guest room. I could see the light under the door as I passed by. For a second, I stopped. Not because I wanted to go in, but because some part of me remembered what it used to feel like to belong on the other side of that wall. I almost knocked. Almost. But then I kept walking. I went back to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I realized, and sat down on the edge of the bed, the same spot where I'd held that receipt just hours earlier. It felt like a different lifetime. I looked around the room again, but this time, it didn't feel staged. It felt over. Not erased. Not meaningless. Just finished. There's a difference. I reached for my phone and opened my contacts. My thumb hovered for a second before I tapped on a name I hadn't called in a while. Mark. My older brother. He picked up on the third ring. Hey, he said. Everything okay? I let out a breath. No, I answered honestly. Not even close. There was a pause. Then, calmer now, steady, just like he'd always been, he said. All right, start talking. And for the first time that day, I did. Not as a husband. Not as someone trying to hold things together. Just as a man who had finally run out of ways to pretend everything was fine. Because the truth was, it wasn't the moment I found out that broke me. It wasn't even the argument. It was that quiet, simple realization at the end of it all. She had already let go. And now, I finally did too. The next morning didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like paperwork. That's the best way I can describe it. No drama. No shouting. Just the quiet, mechanical process of a life starting to dismantle itself piece by piece. I woke up before the alarm. The bed felt too big, even though nothing had physically changed. Emily's side was empty, untouched, cold. For a second, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what normal felt like. Then I stopped trying, because normal was gone. I got up, showered, dressed, and moved through the house like I was following instructions someone else had written. When I stepped into the kitchen, Emily was already there. Of course she was. She looked like she hadn't slept. Hair pulled back too tight. Eyes slightly red. She was holding a mug, but not drinking from it. We stood there for a moment. Two people who used to share everything. Now measuring distance in silence. Morning, she said quietly. I nodded. Morning. No smile this time. No pretending. Just truth. Raw and uncomfortable. Lily came in a minute later, full of energy like nothing in the world had shifted. She hugged Emily, then me, and started talking about a school project. We both listened. We both answered. We both played our roles. And for those few minutes, we were almost convincing. But not to each other. After Lily left for school, the silence came back immediately. Heavier than before. Emily set her mug down. I called him, she said. That caught me off guard. I didn't react right away. Just leaned against the counter, waiting. And I asked. It's over, she said. Simple. Clean. Too clean. I studied her face, looking for something. Relief, regret, certainty. All I saw was exhaustion. Why? I asked. That made her pause. I realized what I was doing, she said slowly. What I was risking. I let out a quiet breath. No, I said. You realized you got caught. That one landed. She didn't argue. Didn't defend herself. And somehow, that made it worse. Do you want to fix this? She asked after a moment. There it was. The question that decides everything. I looked at her, really looked. At the woman I had built a life with. At the person who had broken it. And for a second, I tried to imagine it fixing things. Therapy. Conversations. Time. Trust rebuilt from nothing. Some people do it. Some marriages survive worse. But here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. Surviving isn't the same as healing. And I didn't know if I had it in me to live the rest of my life wondering where she was, who she was texting, if late meeting ever meant what it used to. I don't know, I said finally. And the irony of that wasn't lost on either of us. She nodded slowly, like she expected it. Fair, she whispered. We stood there again, in that same quiet space. But it felt different now. Less explosive. More final. I'm going to call a lawyer, I said. The words felt heavy, but not uncertain. Just necessary. She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Okay. No fight. No pleading. Just acceptance. And somehow, that was the clearest answer I'd gotten from her since this all started. Because love fights. Love argues. Love tries. This was something else. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Are you going to work? She asked. Yeah, I said. I think I need to. She nodded again. And as I stepped outside into the cold morning air, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad in the way I expected. I was just done. Not with life. Not with being a father. But with that version of us. And as I got into my car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in a long while, I didn't look like someone being left. I looked like someone who had finally chosen to walk away. Filing for divorce doesn't feel dramatic. There's no storm, no shouting match, no cinematic moment where someone slams a door and everything collapses behind it. It feels administrative, like canceling a subscription you forgot you signed up for. Except this one cost you 12 years of your life. I sat across from the lawyer 3 days later in a quiet office downtown Chicago. Neutral walls, framed certificates, a coffee machine humming softly in the corner like it had no idea what kind of conversations it was witnessing every day. Her name was Karen Mitchell, mid-50s, sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of person who had seen this exact situation play out 100 times and knew better than to react to any of it. "So," she said, folding her hands on the desk, "you're looking to file for divorce." I nodded. Even that word felt strange in my mouth. Divorce. Like it belonged to someone else's life. Someone else's story. "Do you have children?" she asked. "One," I said. "A daughter. Lily. She's 8. She nodded, making a note. "And your wife? Does she work?" "Yes." "Any major shared assets? House, investments, retirement accounts?" I let out a quiet breath. "All of the above." She gave a small, understanding nod. "All right," she said. "Then we'll need to take this step by step." Step by step. That's how a life ends. Not all at once. Just piece by piece. She started explaining the process, custody arrangements, division of property, timelines, expectations. Her voice was steady, measured, professional. I listened. I answered. I signed where she told me to sign. And the entire time, there was this strange disconnect in my head. Like I was watching someone else do all of this. Like I hadn't been the guy making pancakes just a few days ago, thinking everything was fine. "Do you anticipate this being contested?" she asked at one point. I thought about Emily. About how she didn't fight, didn't argue, didn't beg me to stay. "No," I said. "I don't think so." Karen studied me for a second, then nodded. "That usually makes things easier," she said. Easier. That word didn't sit right. But I understood what she meant. Less conflict. Less damage. Less visible pain. Because the truth is, the hardest part wasn't sitting in that office. It wasn't signing papers. It wasn't even saying the word divorce out loud. The hardest part came later that night. When I got home, and everything was quiet. Emily wasn't there. She'd gone to stay with a friend for a while. The house felt bigger because of it. Too big. I walked through it slowly, room by room, like I was seeing it for the first time. The kitchen, the living room, the hallway with Lily's drawings. Our bedroom. My bedroom. I stopped there for a moment, looking at the bed, the dresser, the little things that used to feel permanent. Then I sat down and let out a long breath. No anger. No shouting. Just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel broken. Not completely. There was still something there. Something steady. Something mine. Because for the first time in days, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't discovering. I wasn't confronting. I had made a decision. And decisions, even painful ones, have a way of grounding you. I leaned back slightly, running a hand over my face, and for the first time since all of this started, I allowed myself to think about the future. Not the one I had planned. That one was gone. But a different one. Unclear. Uncomfortable. But honest. And maybe that was enough. A week passed. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. Like time had decided to keep moving whether I was ready or not. Emily stayed at her friend's place. We kept communication limited, mostly about Lily. School schedules. Pickups. Small, practical things that used to feel insignificant, but now carried the weight of everything we weren't saying. We hadn't talked about us again. Not really. And maybe that was for the best. That Saturday, I took Lily to the park. Same park we'd been going to for years. Same swings. Same worn-out benches. Same old guy feeding pigeons like it was his full-time job. Some things don't change. Lily ran ahead of me, laughing, her jacket half-zipped, hair bouncing as she moved. I watched her climb up the play structure like she had 100 times before. "Dad, watch this," she shouted. "I'm watching," I said, forcing a small smile. She slid down, landed a little too hard, then popped right back up like nothing happened. That's the thing about kids. They fall, and they recover like it's part of the design. I sat down on the bench, leaning forward, elbows on my knees. The cold air bit at my face, but it helped. Kept me present. Is Mom coming later? Lily asked, walking over. There it was. I'd known it was coming. Not today, I said gently. She nodded, like she accepted that, but didn't fully understand it. When is she coming home? She asked. That question, that one didn't have an easy answer. I looked at her, really looked, at the way she trusted me to explain the world in a way that made sense. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized this wasn't just about me and Emily anymore. It was about what came next for her. I exhaled slowly. Mom's going to be staying somewhere else for a while, I said carefully. Her eyebrows pulled together. Like a trip? Not exactly, I replied. More like, we're figuring some things out. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, did you guys have a fight? I almost smiled. Kids always simplify things. Yeah, I said softly. Something like that. She kicked at the dirt a little, thinking. Then she looked up at me again. You're not leaving, right? That question hit deeper than anything else that week. I shook my head immediately. No, I said, firm this time. I'm not going anywhere. She studied my face, like she needed to be sure. Then she nodded. Okay. And just like that, she accepted it. Not because she fully understood, but because she trusted me. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her a little tighter than usual. I've got you, I said again quietly. Same words, different meaning now, because this wasn't just something I felt anymore. It was something I had to prove. Every day? She pulled back after a second and smiled. Can I go again? She asked, already turning toward the playground. Yeah, I said. Go ahead. I watched her run off, full of life, full of momentum. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something that didn't come from pain. Not happiness. Not yet. But something close. Something like direction. Because maybe I didn't know what my life was going to look like anymore. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't lost. I was just starting over. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.